Good morning and welcome to the webinar. I'm Antonio Helmo, the leader of Accessibility Tech project. I would like to remind you that the event provides international sign language and captioning. Instructions will be displayed in the chat. And now I pass the floor to Jesús Hernández, the Director of Accessibility and Innovation of Fundación 11. Please, Jesús.
Thank you very much, Antonio. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Accessibility Tech workshop on accessible telework. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for your attendance. Fundación 11 is leading the Accessibility Tech project in a consortium with Inserte Innovación, Digital Europe, and European Association of Services Providers for Persons with Disabilities, and with the support of European Disability Forum, Social Economy Europe, and Philea. One of the main objectives of Accessibility Tech is to identify and map innovative experiences and solutions that use technology to guarantee the accessibility of people with disabilities in the areas of telework, learning, and online care services. Last February, we launched Accessibility Tech, mapping tool where you can find accessible solutions in Europe located by country and categorized by telework, learning, or telecare. Accessibility Tech also seeks to raise awareness among EU key actors, technological sector, policymakers, services providers, and people with disability, on the importance of developing inclusive and accessible technology to guarantee the realizations of the rights of people with disabilities in accordance with the UN Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the European Accessibility Act and other European regulations. Today's workshop is part of these awareness-raising activities. Accessibility Tech has received funding from the European Union's Rights, Equality, and Citizens Program. I hope you enjoy the workshop. Antonio, I give the floor again. Thank you very much to attend this workshop.
Thanks, Jesus, for your introduction. At the end, if we have time, we will open the floor for audience questions. Please feel free to ask any question in the question and answer section. Please write the name of the speakers to whom your question is directed. Also, any comments or information you would like to share, you are also welcome to write them in the chat. Let's now continue with some interesting interventions. The outbreak of COVID-19 2 years ago forced many companies into remote working. It was hard for many people to get used to the new working conditions and telework applications. For people with disabilities, the situation was worse because many applications for telework were not accessible. They had already been facing technological barriers in work ecosystem even before the COVID-19 outbreak. But then difficulties were much more noticeable with increasing use of video conferencing tools and collaborative work platforms. 2 years later, there is still a continuing debate about advantages versus disadvantages of telework. We don't know to what extent, but the remote work is definitely here to stay. And access for people with disabilities and others at risk of digital exclusion has to be guaranteed in the same conditions as all other workers. Today, we will learn about needs and barriers faced by technology and users with disabilities in telework and the solutions that developers of technologies have implemented to solve them. First, we would like to hear the voice directly from the person with disabilities. I have to say that we are lucky because some of our speakers play an important role in representative organization of persons with disability. And they are also end users themselves. Please let me introduce to Lydia Best. Please, Lydia. Jesus, could you turn on the camera? Jesus, could you turn off the camera, please? Hi, Lydia. Lydia Best is the president of the European Federation of Hard of Hearing People. She's a member of the delegation in Global Initiative for Inclusive ICTs to the International Telecommunication Union, ITU. Lydia is also an internationally recognized accessibility with a long experience in accessibility, policy, innovation, and training for the deaf and hard of hearing. Please, Lydia, could you tell us about how is the situation for the people you represent in your organization?
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone, and thank you for inviting me to your workshop. This workshop is so timely and so important that I couldn't even think about saying, anything else. So today I would like to present hard of hearing people experience, but also solutions which already exist or might support some of the innovation today. I'm trying to move the presentation, but doesn't seem to move.
Okay, Lydia, remember you have the remote control, so please press the left bottom in the mouse on the presentation and then use the left and right arrows on the keyboard.
I don't see anything in the presentation, and I'm using the arrows. The arrows are also not working.
I can see how can you use the mouse?
You are moving
That's
the mouse.
what I'm trying. I'm moving the mouse.
So click on the screen just once with the left. Okay.
Sorry, we tried before. On my left, let's see. Oh, yes, we are there. Technology. Right, so just quick introduction first to the European Federation of Hard of Hearing People, which has been founded in 1993. And we represent by rough figures around 57 million hard of hearing and deafened Europeans, those who lost their hearing later on in life. Our goal, of course, like your goal, is the Europe where we can live without any barriers and have opportunity to participate in all levels of society. We realized this action through publications, projects, campaigns, and involved our members as well as partners. Some of them I'll mention later today. And of course, United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities is our foundation for work, like everyone else who is in this room. So accessibility is the precondition to participation and inclusion. This is something I hear often, especially at International Telecommunication Union. UNCRPD and EU Charter of Rights mention accessibility. And recent spotlight on digital accessibility due to the pandemic, which Antonio just mentioned as well, is welcome. But the challenges remain. Access needs are too often ignored in remote environment because we just forget that someone might actually need an access. So e-learning, telecare, telework need to be based on equitable access. one of the things we came across for hard of hearing people is use of different terms for definition of accessibility that is used in platform or anywhere. This creates confusion, can create disappointment, and also withdrawal from participation. And as an example, widely used word and term live captioning is often used to describe automatically generated captions, but is also used to describe real-time captioning provided by professional captioners. USA, it's no wiser until we actually got to the meeting. I mentioned equitable access, and it is the key. Again, inclusive online education, lifelong learning, all that needs to be equitable access for all. And this project works towards the goal. Measuring progress cannot be achieved without standards and key performance indicators or metrics. We need clearly defined requirements in the EU member states. What is the residual adjustment, and etc. Professional support services and automatic captioning services require clearly defined benchmark metrics in native languages. A uniform language around accessibility terms and definition needs to be adopted to remove confusion. And in the source, I have given you international telecommunication accessibility terms and definition recommendations, which you might find useful. Talking about standards, I'd like to share the work which has been part mostly using the persons with disabilities and experts which are working at International Telecommunication Union, who have used their own experience to define guidance for everyone. And as you can see the date, we were already using remote participation in 2015 and before. So the guidelines for supporting remote participation were around the typical meetings we have for standardization at ITU, but the parts of it can be adapted and used for any online participation, be it work environment, be it presentations, conferences, or meeting like today. The guideline specifies the requirement for ensuring that meetings are accessible to all remote participants. It has guidance for chairs and moderators, for participants, and on inclusion of persons with disabilities and those using assistive technologies. This guidance also discusses pre-meeting and after-meeting actions. So for example, provision of transcript is very important for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, because we cannot take notes while listening and following the captioning. And again, I have given the source of this guidance to everyone. Everything is free for everyone to use and download. In 2019, I was the leading editor of another one, which is a technical paper of overview of remote captioning services. And that overview outlines the benefits of remote captioning, defines terminology, various services aspects, and methods of producing captioning, covers the technical aspects of remote captioning equipment. So there are different equipments. It also covers data protection compliance, because some people have private discussion or conversations like in the medical setting or in legal setting. So encryption and security is very important for remote captioning, and also defines the quality of remote captioning, including minimum accuracy levels, also maximum delay to ensure that there is a good readability, and a readability of a caption, meaning a display and etc. So if anybody has any contacts, I'm very contact questions, or would like to find out more information about the standardization, sorry, my voice is very bad today. I'm very happy to answer any questions. And once again, this is so important that persons with disabilities are included in all areas of innovation from the beginning to the end. So this is my part. I will say thank you very much, and I look forward to the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Actually, it's quite a very important point what you mentioned about the meetings, because the meeting is quite an important action in telework and remote work and hybrid work. I would like to ask just a question, because nowadays automated speech recognition is making impressive progress. We know with artificial intelligence instead. Do you think we need to train the speech to text professionals?
Yes, we do. That's because automated speech recognition depends on the person's voice. Today, this automated speech recognition would definitely struggle with me. Not only I've got Polish accent, but I've got a sore throat today. So this is much more difficult for automated speech recognition to work with any different kind of speakers, different accents, and etc. While it is quite well developed in English language as the most used language, as we know, and the most innovative companies are in US developing automated captioning, it's not in the native languages. And even in the UK, for example, where I'm from, we still prefer to use professional captioners for the accuracy and making sure that we do not misunderstand. So I think both of them, both services are useful and important, and they can coexist. It's for the user or the organizer as well to work together to find the best solution. I actually enjoy automated captioning for online meetings with a small group of people I know. We know each other, we control the meeting, we know when things are not correct, and we use different ways to ensure that we all understood what we are saying to each other. But for the bigger meetings, bigger events like today, automatic captioning is not recommended way forward. But yes, it has the uses, especially in re-speaking. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, speech recognition is quite well developed in English, but not with different accents, as you point, but not in other languages. Apart from the barriers you have mentioned, do you consider are there more barriers in advancing the digital accessibility for the hard of hearing people?
Yes, even when the technology quite works very well, especially in the remote environment, one thing which is a problem is human factor, which means that we need to ensure that the awareness of how to run accessible meeting, making sure the inclusion is part of our foremost planning is number one. Number two is informing users that the technology, the accessibility of the meeting is going to be there for them. So for example, often hard of hearing people are scratching their heads when they see meetings, be it work meetings or be it, meetings like today, not sure if actually this meeting is welcoming them. Will this be with captioning for them? What type of captioning it is? Automated or real-time captioning? So those kind of things. And additionally, there is an issue, and I think a lot of us came across that. Doesn't matter what kind of disability we represent, especially, I know we're not talking about the medical setting today, but especially when it came to the medical settings, because the doctors simply have not been up to date with any technology whatsoever. And even if they would have something available to them, such as Teams, which is the mostly used, they wouldn't even know that there is a captioning somewhere and they should be activating it, for example. So the barriers are not just the technology alone, but they are very important, but they are also the human factor of people using those platforms and not knowing really sometimes what they're doing, including how to, for example, spotlight sign language interpreters. This is also another issue I have come across from other people. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lydia, for your presentation and very important points you made. And now I'm going to pass the floor to Christian Sainz. Christian Sainz is the Chief Digital Information Officer and Head of Accessibility Department at ONCE. ONCE is the Spanish Organization for the Blind. Christian is also the coordinator of ONCE's Innovation Laboratory. Please, Christian, we would like to know your perception from the point of view of the people with visual disability.
Thank you, Antonio. Thank you for having me in this workshop. From the blindness point of view, or visually impaired point of view, telework or e-learning and telecare have some issues, and even if since the beginning of the pandemic many things have been improved, I think, as Lydia, there's still some challenges remaining. When the pandemic started, we here in ONCE, we have thousands of blind people working and visually impaired, and but with the technology at the office, we were about 1,000 people working. We were not prepared, as I think all the rest of the organizations, and we had to react very quickly just to keep the organization working, because we have more than 70,000 affiliates that needed to keep receiving the services that we provide to blind and visually impaired people. So, well, as I said, we were not prepared, and we had to start to use. One of the points is that we didn't have enough devices for to make all people start teleworking from one day to the following day, and then we design a procedure to make people to work with their own devices, because they had their own technical or their assistive technology and everything that was needed. The trouble was that, well, we had to take account of security, accessibility, and then working with remote desktop. The desktop was not so easy for us and for blind people. Because we had never, as organization, been providing teleworking. So in 1 week, we had to design and some learning, some training for all those blind persons that couldn't access, not only because of the technology was not the best, but also because of the accessibility. So we made some manuals that we could find them even a couple of weeks later. There were on the social networks, because there were manuals that could help not only teleworkers, but all the blind people that didn't that were not used to use technology for meetings, as at the beginning, Zoom or Teams and so on. So those manuals were made by blind people and for blind people, and they were quite useful, as I say, not only for teleworkers, but also for our affiliates. And that was one of the principles where the telecare was based on, because our organization was trying to keep in touch with our all our affiliates, just to avoid them bad situation because of loneliness, or because they couldn't manage with their daily duties because of the lockout. In terms of telework, we also started to use collaborative tools, as we had been working for decades with Microsoft technology. We used Teams, and it was also a challenge, and still being, because not only of accessibility, because also of usability. Blind people can use these tools, but not as quick or as easily as sighted people. And then we had to program a progressive adoption of these tools, just to avoid our blind workers have problems, and for all the communication that was starting to be based on that technology. Also, we had to explain and train and how to do meetings, because it's very common to share our screens and so on, and that's not an accessible technology. And then yet, because I know Fundación is working on that, but so we had to explain mainly to our sighted workers how to lead meetings to avoid the not inclusion of blind people while sharing our screens. Also, we found out that support, we were not prepared to give support to our users in their homes. So that was also a challenge that now is quite useful and for us, but we also had to design how to give support to all our blind users, well, and even not blind. And also to compensate the interaction that normally blind people have at the office with sighted people. So when we have some accessibility issue or need, we can ask to our colleagues to help us, and that was not so possible when we were everyone at home. We also started, well, not started, but increased the collaboration with software manufacturers, because we really needed the accessibility and usability get better for us, and it was not such a quick process. So we increased our collaboration in that case, especially with Microsoft, and it was also a collaboration that still now, and we are really seeing many improvements in all that technologies that are very helpful for us.
Thank you, Christian. Now that you mentioned your collaboration with the Microsoft and the company, do you have any special requirement for the technological sector? As you know, we have today representative for technological sectors. Do you have any special requirement or any special wish, something?
Well, I would say design for all is our main wish and our main need, and but just always working with us. We do know all disabled people. We do know about our accessibility needs and the problems that we have using any tool or any interaction in society or whatever. So it's quite important to work with us in the design for all of any technology.
That's right. I'm completely right. Completely agree with you. Thanks, Christian, for your presentations and your point of view. And now let me please introduce to Sofian El Amrani. Sofian, yeah. Sofian, yes, I'm passing you the floor, Sofian.
Hi, everybody. Good morning.
Hi, Sofian. Sofian is easy to read and advocacy expert and Inclusion Europe. He's also been working with the European Platform of Self-Advocates for many years. Sofian is also a member of the Council of Inclusion International since November 2020. Please, Sofian, I pass you the floor.
Thank you.
Un segundo, ¿le preparo la presentación yo, Quique?
Sí, por favor.
Okay, Sofian, please give us a moment to prepare your presentation.
Okay.
Try to click with the left button of the mouse and pass the slides with the left and right arrows on the keyboard.
Yeah, perfect. Good morning, everybody. My name is Sufyan Al-Amrani. I'm the Easy to Read and Self-Advocacy Officer at Inclusion Europe. Inclusion Europe fights for the equal rights and full inclusion of people with intellectual disability and their families. We want to see a world where people with intellectual disability enjoy the same right as everyone else, everywhere, all the time. Inclusion Europe has 82 members in 39 countries. I'm also part of the European Platform of Self-Advocates, which has 21 members in 17 countries. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to talk to you about employment for people with intellectual disability. Barriers to employment before COVID-19. Before COVID-19, I was in the office all the time, but many people with intellectual disabilities did not work. We can see in the graphic that before COVID-19, people with disabilities were already less employed than others. And there's a graphics that you can click and you'll get to see the report. Changes during COVID-19. All persons with intellectual disability were lucky enough could telework during lockdown. They had to adapt to new technologies. Some who were not able to work also had to adapt to stay in touch with their families. Barriers using technology. I worked from home during COVID-19. It was not easy. I did not have all my files that I needed for some of the work I had to do. Working online was difficult for people with intellectual disabilities. We worried about the effect of COVID-19 on employment of persons with intellectual disability. We know that we are the first ones to be pushed outside the labor market when a financial and social crisis happens. This was said by Laszlo Berez, who is the president of the European Platform of Self-Advocates. Understanding technology. During lockdown, people with intellectual disabilities had to work from home. Some did not have computers. Sometimes technology was difficult to understand. Sometimes we did not have support. Softwares. I had to use Teams for online meetings and many other software as well. I would like if there was a guide in easy to read on how to use Zoom or Skype. Websites. Nowadays, I feel that there are not a lot of easy to read websites. For example, I need to access the bank website or a taxi website, but the website is not easy to read. When I get emails, they're hard to understand. I am confused. It is difficult when there are many colors, play on words, abbreviation, links, and many documents attached. Improving accessibility. People with intellectual disabilities find it hard to use new software. That is why people who create software need to make sure that all people with intellectual disability can find ways for them to use that is easy to use. Websites should have a version in easy to read with pictograms. Screen readers will read to people with intellectual disability the content on the website. It is important not to put too much information. It is important to consult and discuss with people with intellectual disabilities when designing a website or a software. More can be found on Inclusion Europe's website on easy to read. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to ask them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sofian. Yes, at the end of the event, we have time for attendees. But I would like to ask you one question. How could employers make sure that people with intellectual disabilities know how to use technologies?
I think the employers should give training on how to use technology, like how to turn on a computer, how to sign in to a website that they'll need to do their jobs. Because nowadays, employers, I feel, don't do that, don't give enough training to people with intellectual disabilities, knowing how to sign into to Word or Excel or PowerPoint, and that needs to be given training.
Yeah, actually, we know, and thank you for the very illustrative graphics you show us. We are aware of the barriers facing by people with cognitive disabilities, but let's be a little optimistic about technology do you think technology can be accessible? If we make the technology accessible, can be a way to include people in society, the people you represent?
Yes, because if you make it accessible, you get more people who want to try new things and try new software and go, okay, yeah, that's actually looks like a good program, or maybe I can find a computer that will fit my needs if it has voice recognition or a screen reader, and it will be easier for people with intellectual disabilities to learn how to use a computer, use software, so they don't feel left out and not left out of the communication bubble, and emails should be written easier and not use hard words and use pictograms, as I said in one of my slides.
Okay, Sophia, I hope I have pronounced correctly your name during the whole session. Thanks for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, right. And now I pass the floor to the digital and technological sector. We have representatives from well-known companies at Microsoft, Google, and Atos, who can explain us how do they deal with accessibility change at Telework. Let me introduce to Hector Minto. Hector is a senior technology evangelist at Microsoft. As an accessibility evangelist at Microsoft, he's engaging across the European workforce and stakeholders to showcase inclusive design, product accessibility, and innovation. Please, Hector Minto, could you explain us how do you from Microsoft try to solve the problem that the previous speaker has explaining us?
Good morning, Antonio. Good morning, everybody. And super interesting to listen to Sofiane and Christian before me. Lots to share in terms of the progress we're trying to make on accessible tech. I think it's useful to set the scene as we start on what's happening out there in mainstream technology. So if I can just see my first slide, I'll click on that and hopefully move to my first slide. I'm trying. Maybe if the team can move me on to the next slide instead.
Hector, try now, click with the left bottom of the mouse and then...
Got it. I'm in. Okay, it's not in my contract to make Zoom look difficult, I promise you. All right, so look, hybrid work is here to stay. We're starting to see that essentially there was a lot of forced learning. And when I was listening to Christian talking about the experience of people who are blind, using our products during the pandemic, I think it was super interesting to reflect on the fact that there was a forcing function, essentially taking on the latest new technologies was something that people had not done en masse. But as people were sent home to work, people were working remotely, people were teaching their children remotely, obviously with remote learning, suddenly people were forced to learn to use these technologies en masse. It's something that we've never ever seen before in human history. But as we come out of the pandemic, and we hope that we are coming out of the pandemic and towards some sense of normalcy as we move back, what we can absolutely tell you is people are not returning to the office with the same expectations. And so for people with disabilities to be included in the future of work, in the future of hybrid work, it is absolutely imperative that these systems are accessible. But not just the remote conferencing software. We've also got to make sure that all of the digital applications that workforces build are built through the lens of disability inclusion and accessibility. The conference software, Teams, Zoom, and others, have obviously been at the forefront of this conversation, though, as the pandemic has progressed. And hopefully I can share with you some of the things that we're seeing out there. Just to quickly read a couple of the statistics off this slide. 73% of employees want flexible remote work options to stay. 67% of employees want more in-person work or collaboration. So they recognize that they're missing some of that human collaboration outside of work. And 66% of leaders say their company is considering completely redesigning office space for hybrid work. Again, this is one of those topics that we must ensure that people with disabilities are included in that design. Design is probably the most important topic in the world of accessibility. It's incredibly difficult to put accessibility back in afterwards because budgets have been spent by that point, the design has been set. We need people with disabilities to be included in the designs far earlier in the design process. Now, also, when we think about accessibility, it's been traditional for people to think about the nuts and bolts of accessibility. Does it work with screen readers? Do we add captions? We've got to increasingly also start thinking about accessibility as just inclusive design, creating better experiences for everybody. Lots of different, what we would call personas in the design world. So increasingly, the accessibility conversation is moving to also include a much larger audience. And I think that's a really useful approach for people to think about. What we also know through the pandemic is that there was, because of inaccessibility and because things were difficult and not designed for people with disabilities, that there were some negative disproportionate impacts for people with disabilities, including 1 in 5 workers with disabilities losing their jobs. And when we think about remote education, 35% of what we would call in the UK here special needs children or special educational needs children doing little to no remote learning. And these are not just about that immediate impact that has on that individual. This is also about people having long-term impact of missing out on 2 years of work or 2 years of education. We are banking challenges for us as a society looking ahead and moving forward. What we do know is that people turned to Microsoft through this process. Now, I was delighted to hear, Christian, that you feel that we've helped make progress on things like Teams during the pandemic. The level of feedback we got on Teams was huge, huge. We have a global disability answer desk and our volume of calls for support requirements on our products and disability doubled through the pandemic. That's because people were using many of these products for the first time. And all of these products have their own challenges. And also onboarding, learning new software, as Sofiane said really well, is difficult. We also found that our dyslexia support, our immersive reader use, included in all of our browsers, inside Teams, we have reading support for people with learning disability or with reading disabilities called the Immersive Reader. And the use of that product, including things like the read aloud features in Office, the use of those features went up almost 6 times, 560%. And for people who were deaf or hard of hearing, leveraging auto captioning, before the pandemic, people were very resistant, really didn't want to use the auto captioning and felt that it wasn't up to scratch. And in many ways, there are still challenges with auto captioning. But 30 times more people through the pandemic started using captioning. So there was this forcing function. I think this is really what we must reflect on. This led to more innovation. And so as we think looking forward, Christian also talked about just the product got better through the pandemic because the feedback was greater. But what it also led to was different design decisions to be made on our products and for work on some of those accessibility features to be accelerated. And I just wanted to close with a few things to look out for coming down the track, but also maybe things that you might have missed that will help people with disabilities as we think about things like returning to hybrid work, more teleworking. Firstly, Teams now supports both automatic captioning and human captioning. So you now can have a human stenographer included in your Teams meeting. You have the option now for both. When we started with the pandemic, it was really just AI only, but we got a lot of feedback that people needed. There were certain scenarios where the flexibility wasn't required, but people needed the accuracy to be absolutely there. And so human transcription has been added. Intelligent device transcripts or captioning. As people go back into hybrid work, obviously, if you're, as somebody who's deaf, hard of hearing, using the captioning, and there are 6 people in a meeting room, you will not know which person is speaking through the captioning. So when you now go into an intelligent room, you will tell the device, the intelligent meeting device, who is in the room and train it to learn whose voice is whose. And therefore, you'll start to get more intelligent transcripts and captioning. In PowerPoint, this is one that's super interesting for people who are blind, particularly, or people with low vision. When you present PowerPoint content inside Teams, automatically, regardless of the design decisions of the person who created the content, you have a high contrast mode available to you. You can also translate the slides into your preferred language. And for people who are using screen readers, the presented content, the links, will be clickable. So you will be able to access the links through your screen reader in the presentations that are shared to you. In PowerPoint Live, we're now seeing captions available in over 65 languages. For Windows focus mode, people with a learning disability or people with attention deficit disorder, dyslexia, a lot of work has been done on the focus modes available in modern technology. There are a lot of distractions for people working from home and working from distance. And therefore, a lot of work has now gone into the focus modes available within modern computing. These were announced at a recent event, as was the big one that was announced a couple of weeks ago, which is Windows 11 offline captioning across all of Windows. Essentially, what this gives you is automated captioning in English only at the moment, and obviously different languages will come, everywhere on your PC. So if you're coming across non-captioned content or inaccessible content, or you need captioning in a meeting room, you can open up the microphone and essentially you will have captioning everywhere. And the final one I want to just talk about is co-authoring. What we find here is that the modern way of working on documents together is for both people to be in the same document working together. We've now got an option for what we call inclusive co-authoring, which essentially allows somebody with dyslexia or a different viewing requirement to see a completely different version of that document from the other people who are working on it, without necessarily everyone having to use one person's preferred viewing on those documents. So hopefully what you're seeing here is that the level of innovation is ramping up because the level of feedback through telework and this new world that we're all preparing for is increasing. We're getting so many more ideas back from the community about what's not working from them. And we've developed this culture of inclusion at Microsoft that hopefully means that people have permission to go and deliver that next great inclusive feature. Still work to do, but hopefully that's a useful summary of where we see where we are, Antonio.
Thank you, Hector. It's easy to understand when we have the chance to see the number and figures you show us and to be aware of the real situation. It's quite helpful. Thank you. Hector, from your experience and all what you said, what trends have you seen in the issues faced by organizations through the pandemic, particularly in the largest employers?
Great question. Right, let me share with you. There was a wake-up call for many of our customers around the globe around the amount of hidden disability that already existed within their organization. There are many employees who don't talk about their disability at work, and organizations were kind of, before the pandemic, I think, just not really aware, particularly I would say IT departments, computer departments. They didn't really understand their role in delivering an equitable experience, because you give somebody their laptop and they get on with their job, potentially. What's been interesting is the number of IT teams who have been talking to us about accessibility through the pandemic, because people are putting their hand up and saying, this doesn't work for me anymore. Distance working doesn't work for me anymore. I cannot use this. I cannot use my screen reader on my home network with the VPN. Might be another kind of common issue. So there's something super interesting here about IT departments learnt a lot about disability through the pandemic. They really did. I can honestly assure you they are leaning in. And our Microsoft Partner Network are actually also leaning in and saying, how can we support this more? So we're raising the visibility of disability in the tech industry, we hope. But traditionally, the inclusion of people with disabilities in work might have been more of an HR issue, more of a diversity and inclusion issue. As it becomes more of an IT issue, a very specific IT issue, I think there's a super interesting opportunity for us to really educate IT teams. We're giving away a lot of free training and things for people. I can put some links in the chat. But please lean into Microsoft, lean into our teams, and we will make sure that your IT stakeholders can maybe really help you drive progress here. Hopefully that helps, Antonio.
Yeah, sure, for sure. Thank you, Hector. Let me introduce to Christopher Patno.
Antonio, I'll stay in the chat, so I can answer questions in the chat now for people, okay?
Sure, please. Thank you. Hello. Hi.
Morning.
Christian. Let me introduce to Christian Patnoe. Christian, he is the Europe, Middle East, Africa-led accessibility and disability inclusion head at Google. He's the chair for the Immersive Captions community group with the W3C. He's also the accessibility working group chair for the XR Association. And he has more than 20 years experience in tech working at companies like Apple, Sony, Ericsson, and Disney, where he has built hardware, software, and services. Please, Christopher, could you tell us what actions are taking Google to make a telework environments more accessible and inclusive for people with disabilities?
Yeah, I always hate following Hector. He is so thoughtful and professional, and the work that Microsoft does is top notch. So I just want to give them a huge shout out. I'm from this little company that has not been mentioned once here. This little company called Google. You might have heard of us. We have a search engine. We have a streaming service. We have some platforms like Chrome and Android. And I just want to share with you that they're here. They're accessible. Our talkback on Android is in Spanish, and it is about on par with the competition. Chrome OS has live captions today for all sources that are in English. More languages coming soon. Chromevox supports Spanish. We have applications like Live Transcribe, which I'll talk about in a moment. We have neat applications like Lookout, which supports people who are blind, allowing them to recognize text of the world around them. We also have a platform called Google Docs and Google Slides and Google Sheets, which are also fully accessible and inclusive. But I'm not here to sort of trade jabs with Apple or with Microsoft, because we're all competing on accessibility. We're all here to work and support the same people. What I really want to talk about is the story on how to make things accessible and how you go about doing this. And we're using Telework and then these are Telework to help drive this story. So the first thing I want to share is that it is a story of progress and not perfection. You are never going to have anything be completely accessible for everyone. And what is so important to make sure that we do this well is that we collaborate with the different communities. So something that could be accessible for someone who's blind may not be accessible for someone who's low vision, or something that is accessible for someone who has dyslexia may not be accessible for someone who has an intellectual disability. The humanity is broad, and the problems that we need to solve are broad. So the most important thing is that you continue to make your product better in collaboration with the community. You co-design, you co-edit, you co-build, and you create products that make people's lives better. I'm lucky here at Google that accessibility is part of our mission statement to make the world's information universally accessible and useful. So it is an easy sell inside Google to make sure that we focus on accessibility. So the slice of technology I wanted to talk about here for the sake of this conversation is captioning or communication. Before I start, I want to say that there is absolutely a need for things like human-based captions, cart services, because AI-based, ASR-based technologies aren't perfect. They aren't perfect for English, let alone for other languages or other accents. And so Idia's point is extremely valid. There's an awful lot of work to be done to make ASR be helpful. So you have the automatic captions represent both the person and the topic that's being talked about. And we're making great progress. At Google, we have a technology called Euphonia and an application called Project Relate. This is English today, but I'm happy to announce that we are looking for partners to help us expand into French and Spanish. So I'm going to leave my email address here in the chat when I'm done. And if anyone wants to help us make our automatic software better in Spanish, especially for people who have non-typical speech patterns, say aphasia or a deaf accents, please reach out to me and I can put you in contact with the team. So aside, the technology is good and it's getting better, and it gets better by working together. What I want to talk about next is sort of the history of captions and automatic captions, because it's actually quite a broad story. YouTube added captions in English and automatic captions in English in 2009. And this is a really important step because it wasn't perfect, but what we learned quickly is that it was really important to have something instead of nothing. So again, we started our progress, not perfection journey way back in 2009. And today we support 13 different languages in terms of automatic YouTube captions. Everything from Dutch, English, French, Spanish, German, Indonesian, Italian, Japanese, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can also put the list in the chat if you're interested. In terms of work environments, if you are in room, we added captions into Google Slides in English and Google Hangouts. And in 2019, we actually released free captions in English to anyone in the world. And now today, the captions in Google Meet support English, French, German, Portuguese, Spanish, both Spanish and Mexican Spanish. We also have a live translation capability from English to Spanish, French, Portuguese, and German. So we use captioning and this technology to help bring people together and communicate better. What you are able to do with these captions is bring people together in the digital life. One important thing I want to share with you, since nobody seems to know about Google Technologies here, is that Google Meet is one where the user can turn on captions without having to have the host enable it. So if you're using a Google Meet meeting, you can turn on your captions. You don't need to have any preset expectations. Your host doesn't have to make anything special happen. It's just there. We're okay for the digital, but as we move more and more into a hybrid world, then you start using other applications and other experiences to promote people communicating better. There's a really neat application called Live Transcribe that is profoundly helpful for people. It is an application that provides captions, real live captions in a transcript form in 80 different languages. It also provides contextual awareness. So say if you're sitting at your desk and someone says your name, we can flash the light or send a notification and let you know that someone's trying to reach out to you. We can also use this technology to tell you when important things are happening around you. So say you're working at home and the alarm goes off, say a fire alarm or a car alarm. We can notify you and let you know when these things are happening. So having this contextual awareness around you is important. So we're trying to provide solutions to help you stay connected in the digital life, in your personal life, and in the hybrid life as well. One thing I'd like to talk about these captions, this ability to have a real-time, real-life caption anywhere you want is really important. When you go to that doctor's office, if they don't have access to an interpreter, you can use this application to allow you to communicate with a person in real life. You can have that conversation with your doctor. If you choose not to speak, you can text. The communication is the core aspect of this. Realizing that how important these captions can be, we took this one step farther, and then we added captions to anything in Android. So we'll provide captions for you, anything on Android, all local, all. So there's no data charges, there's no privacy concerns. It all happens there for you on your phone. And we've even started adding it so that you can have captions for a phone call. Now you can have when you make a phone call, someone will hear a message saying this person is going to be reading captions. So they're aware when something is happening. They're aware that there is a transcription happening, and then they can choose to have a phone call. But also, if they choose they don't want to speak, we can use a speech to text and text to speech cooperation, so that the person can text an answer, and we'll take this text, generate speech, and speak it back to them. So this person is able to communicate using a phone, even if they can't speak. So it's really powerful to me and really exciting to me to see how this technology can evolve over time. We started off with YouTube captions and realized it could support more people. Then we brought it into Slides, then we brought it into Meet. The more we collaborate with the community, the more use cases we found. By working with the community, we built Live Transcribe, and then the captioning feature, and then captioning for calls. So building with the community is critically important. Listening to the community, because there's always ways to make it better.
Thank you, Christopher. I agree, working with the community make us all better. One question from your experience in tech companies and all what you said, could you tell us which of new emerging technologies have more potential for accessibility work in the future, not only telework, but also other fields, but mainly in telework?
I'm particularly impressed and excited with the adventure in immersive technologies, XR. So imagine glasses that can give you subtitles when you walk around. We published a paper on this a couple of years ago. I'm not pre-announcing any secret project. Or the ability to have a camera on said glasses and then have it provide information for you. Today, you can hold up your camera and it'll read text to you. Why couldn't that eventually be sitting on your face? So having this awareness, contextual awareness of the audio and the world around you in a private, thoughtful way is really impactful for telework, for interaction on the street, for living your life, going to school.
Well, I'm looking forward to that in the near future. Thanks, Christian, for our presentation. And now I pass the floor to Ricardo Garcia. Ricardo Garcia, hello, hi, Ricardo. He's the head of accessibility and digital inclusion for the Iberia region at Atos. He has worked in the field of digital accessibility and disability inclusion for almost 20 years. He has also a broad experience in helping companies, universities, non-profit organizations advance in their digital accessibility and inclusion policies and strategies in the United States, Latin America, Middle East, and Europe. I'm going to ask Ricardo, please, to be a little brief because we are running out of time, and we'd like to have at least 5 minutes from the audience questions. So please, Ricardo, thank you, and go ahead.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Antonio. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here today. Thank you for the invitation to participate in this webinar. It's great to see some familiar faces, some good friends, and the amazing Christopher Padno that I was listening to right now. So just to say that I don't know whether we can move forward with the slides, so we can pass on this next slide, please.
Hi, Ricardo, please press the left button of the mouse in the presentation and then pass the slide with the left and right arrows in the keyboard, please.
Okie dokie. Thank you so much. Right, so thank you. So very briefly, I'm going to be talking about how we're trying to bring together the different efforts within our organization. Atos, just to say that Atos is a really large worldwide organization with close to 110,000 employees in 71 countries. And Atos is an Olympic and Paralympic Games partner or sponsor for many years. So we are involved in cybersecurity, in data, big data, cloud computing, but obviously also accessibility, workplace accessibility. How are we bringing together accessibility as a practice? So together with the other big initiatives that Atos has embraced that have to do with decarbonization, sustainability, and also diversity and inclusion. So that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're engaged in. So we can embrace all of these areas in an effective and responsible way, and that can render results that can be scalable. So I'm just going to fly through some of the slides that I had here, because I want to focus on why we're doing this. So our principle here is to try to include everyone, moving from exclusion or from segregation, of course, and not only focusing on insertion, but actually driving and achieving true inclusion in the workplace. And how we're doing this? We're doing like small examples, could be like the eco branding that we're using that works for decarbonization, but works for also for legibility. We may be thinking of persons with dyslexia here, but larger full-scale approaches, like building the full ecosystem accessibility model that we have, that will focus on seeing what are the resources that we have, focusing on them either owned or external. Also those that we are purchasing, so a strong focus on procurement as well, but also involving the whole value chain, right? So this is the holistic approach that we are following at Atos. And also what we want to achieve also is higher engagement from all our employees worldwide, right? And this is about providing all the support they need, basically making the employee experience much better, much more engaged. And this has to do with providing the support that they will need, and adding all the innovative technologies that are out there to provide services to our employees, so they can be much more involved and can be much more, as I said, productive, and also gather data about how this is working for them, right? So we can continuously improve. It's really important to focus on the employee mental health well-being. This has been an issue throughout the whole pandemic, as we know. The number of or the prevalence of mental health issues has skyrocketed since the pandemic started. So we have a really strong focus on making sure that all our employees stay healthy from a mental standpoint, and we are relying on some partners to do this. But also, as I said, we want to know what's going on. We want to proactively collect data from the voice of our employees, to see how they're doing, how all these systems, all these initiatives are working for them, of course, so we can make informed decisions and improve all the solutions and all the resources that we are providing to them. Learning is a big piece in all this, so we are really leaning on micro learning, smaller learning, if you want, pills, so we can build capacity internally. And we are seeing that this is working really well, relying on micro learning rather than e-learning. So these shorter pills are proving really good. And then again, we are partnering with some external vendors for this. And so in order to do all this, we've built a whole digital workplace portfolio. So digital workplace is actually the unit within Atos that is driving all the accessibility and workplace accommodation or adjustment efforts. And we've built a whole ecosystem of support, of governance, and service catalog of products and services, and obviously the assistive technology product provision for all our employees and also customers as well. And we have a really strong focus in building and embedding and baking accessibility throughout the whole creation of digital content, right? From the very design phase and the building process and the deployment, right? There's no, I mean, it's not worth waiting until the final stages to test whether it's something, some application, some deployment is accessible. We know that. So that's why our effort is focused on embedding accessibility from the very beginning, and that's why we are providing all this capacity to our developers, to our internal teams, and also working with vendors in the procurement process so that we can educate them and we can gradually improve the accessibility of the products that we are provided from our vendors. So the procurement piece is a really, really strong component of this whole initiative. And obviously, there's a lot of challenges in the for our employees that we're trying to tackle through these initiatives. And I'm just showing some examples, some really simple examples here of the kind of issues that we all face on a daily basis since since the pandemic, probably before, but have to do a lot with telework, right? So we're all suffering from information overload, right? And this is not good because we are trying to put out many fires at the same time, something to definitely deal with. We are conscious that we all need to make time for ourselves, right? Allocate some time to ourselves, make meetings much shorter, time to reflect, time to work on our own things. And this is something that has to be mainstream, basically, within the organization. How can we do that, right? Effectively managing our time through schedules, but also notifications. This is a pain, as we know, right? So this could be good or really, really bad, right? So we need to be mindful whether we want to turn them, when do we want to turn them off, right? Because this is really bad for concentration, but really bad for some, could be really bad for some people with, for example, persons with dyslexia, persons with attention deficit. So definitely something to focus on. As I was saying, again, these are small examples of things that can be done on a daily basis. We can all do, like turn on the do not disturb or the mute in the chat, whichever tool you may be using, whether it's Teams, whether it's some other tool. This is really important, right? To find some space for yourself to be able to concentrate on your work and avoid overload. Simple tools like spell checking that can be really, really bothering sometimes, that are turned on and off. Well, definitely something to manage in an effective way. And obviously the possibility of using assistive technologies that are embedded or built in many of the tools that we all use on a daily basis and we may not be aware of. Many people are not aware of all the possibilities that the Office products have and all the Google products have in terms of assistive technologies that can be really helpful on a daily basis for our work. Okay?
Thank you, Ricardo. Sorry, I interrupt you. We're running out of time. But before, I would like to ask you, how do you actors? How do actors feel with the accessibility regulations at the European level? For instance, with the accessibility European Accessibility Act or any other regulations?
Right. So that's a great question. Thank you, Antonio. Yeah, we are. So we're working on different avenues. That internally we're building accessibility requirements focused on, or the use, or have the N301 549 as the main basis, so web content accessibility guidelines for the web stuff. For that same matter, in our procurement processes. But obviously, for example, working with the public sector in Spain, we are part of the, let's say, short list of vendors for the public sector, for which every single RFP will include or mandate or require that whatever is developed, whatever is delivered, meets the N301 549. So for that same matter, we are training our internal teams, not only raising awareness about that, but also training them on how to implement accessibility and how to meet the accessibility standards that the European Union mandates. for all public tenders or requests for proposals for procurement processes in the public sector, but also for companies that are considered of a public utility or of public service. So this would be all the utilities and telecom companies and so forth. So yes, all our teams are aware of that, and we are proactively working on building capacity to respond to this. Because as I said, it's mandatory for public sector RFPs. Every single public sector RFP will mandate focusing, or at least being responsive in terms of accessibility, in terms of meeting the EN 301-549.
That's right, Ricardo. It's good that you talk about regulations, because I would like to highlight the work of the European Commission, who has really fight for the rights of people with disability and their collective, that's because.
Yeah, if I may say something, we are also raising awareness about the upcoming European Accessibility Act that is going to affect public private sector, right? So and this is coming into force in this year, June 22, but it will enter fully into force in 25. So we are already working in that area, trying to meet the requirements that are going to be coming up very, very soon, including ourselves, right? That's going to be affecting ourselves as well as a private operator.
Yeah, that's right. So I always bear in mind the work of the European Commission on regulations. I would like to thank you, Ricardo, all the speakers, for your insights. And now we have a short time for the audience questions. I don't know if maybe I will ask the help of my colleague Kike. I saw there were some questions, but they have already been.
Yeah, Antonio, we don't have any questions in the Q&A section, but Rocío Velardo have the hand raised, but she doesn't put any question in the chat, so I don't know if she has a question or a comment, but it's the moment that she want to put it in the chat. But if every speaker can switch on the camera, please, to do a final picture of the session, please.
Yeah, I also would like to announce that we are opening a forum. Actually, we have opened a theme, a topic related to today's webinar. So I will encourage and invite to all attendees to ask questions to that forum. Could you, Kike, please write down in the chat the link to the forum?
Of course.
Yeah. So we would like to continue with the debate and share information and knowledge. So we encourage all speakers and also attendees, please, to visit the chat, because we're sure you have very, very, very important topics to debate, and we would like to know your opinions. And also we invite you to visit the web page from Accessibility Project, where we will keep news actuality. Well, so thank you to all the speakers and all the attendees. So it's now time to end the event.
Excuse me, Antonio. Thank you all the speakers to switch on the cameras. I think that my partner Jorge did the picture, so you can switch off the camera if you want. But we have a question from Ana Ortega for Christian Sainz. I would like to know, what is ONCE doing now after all the lessons learned from COVID and the high speed development they had to carry on?
I would say we still keep in touch with manufacturers, and we work on that. And we also stay aware about of all the new technologies that can be available for us. But we also well, I would say we keep pushing with all that has to do with training. We are doing permanently webinars and any kind of training, and we're writing manuals, and we are working on adoption of all these tools, new tools, always from the point of view of the accessibility. And not less important, we are also, because these tools are accessible, but the contents may not. So we are also working on teaching everybody to make their contents accessible inside the organization.
Okay, I invite all attendees and also speakers again to participate in the forum, because I think today we talk about very relevant topics, and I think we can keep the debate on the forum. You can send also your testimonies or your impressions, or also the attendees, because once you are, everybody has something to say in the forum. Also invite you to visit the project webpage, because we will keep information about our future activities. We have also a webinar in May, I believe it's in 25th of May, if I'm not wrong, about telecare and online services. Thanks again to all of you. I hope we can meet again in the following events. So thanks again, and thank you. I hope to see you soon, if possible, in the forum.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you all. Good to see
Thanks
you,
all.
Hector, Christian.
Bye, everybody.
Yes, nice to see you again.
Nice
Yeah.
to see you again. Yeah.
Bye.
Been a long time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Adios.